Everyone here in the room has their own backpack full of experiences. Tonight I'm going to share some of my experiences and the lessons I have learned about them. Let's go back to the year 2003. At that time, I was deployed as an international military policeman at the NATO headquarters in Kabul, Afghanistan. On a hot day, I was working out in our improvised gym. While I was bench pressing, I heard the rock music playing softly on the background. Sweat dripped down my body. The atmosphere was relaxed, and I almost forgot I was in a war zone. Until suddenly I heard a buzzing sound, getting louder and louder through the air, followed by a violent explosion. I dropped my dumbbells and felt the vibrations go through my body. I looked around me, and the other soldiers were unarmed and started to run out of the tent, just like me. At that moment, the siren sounded, and I saw many soldiers moving to the bunkers. I quickly ran to the military police station, where I put on my bulletproof vest, put on my helmet, grabbed my weapon, and made myself ready for deployment with the Quick Reaction Force. We quickly drove out of the gates to help where this was needed. And luckily, we found that the impact was 100 meters past the camp, and no injuries were reported. From that moment on, I became even more alert than I already was. In 2006, I was as a Dutch Marine in Groningen for the parachutist training. It was in the middle of the night, and the weather was pretty nasty. With lots of rain and a strong storm, I sat in a Hercules airplane with many other Marines, and I felt a strong turbulence. That night, I would make my first static line night jump with full gear and weapon. I was very tense and tried to calm myself by breathing slowly. Then I heard the 1 minute sign from the para instructor, and that meant getting up and setting up in a row. The side doors opened, and I felt and I heard the wind rush through the plane. The para instructor yelled, 10 seconds, chin to the chest, followed by green on, go! There was no going back now. I shuffled closer and closer to the side doors. The row next to me moved at the same pace, and they would jump out at the other side at the same time. One Marine in front of me, and before I knew it, I jumped out into the pitch black night.
10 seconds into the bottom!
I felt a hard blow, and I looked above me, and I was shocked to see that I had collided with another Marine. My parachute had not opened because my ropes were entangled in his one. I hung about 5 meters below him, and we rushed down much too fast. I yelled at him to untie me, but I soon realized it wasn't going to work. I panicked and watched life flash before my eyes. Then I quickly decided to open my emergency chute, and almost immediately after it opened, we crashed to the ground pretty hard. I was extremely dizzy and lay still for several seconds, minutes. However, there was not much time to recover. and prepared myself to continue the exercise. In the year 2011, I was an ambulance driver in training in Maastricht. When I was eating at the ambulance station, suddenly the beeper went off. In the ambulance, I saw on the screen that the report was a CPR on the streets. My heart rate increased. After 10 years of training on CPR mannequins at defense, this would be my first CPR on a real person. When we arrived at location, I saw a man laying down in the grass next to a busy road. My colleagues instructed me that I could already start with chest compressions. So I didn't think for a second. I knelt down next to the man, placed my hands, and started giving chest compressions. Almost immediately, I heard and I felt some ribs break under my hands, even in all the noise. I gave my colleagues a questioning look. I doubted myself, but they seemed anything but impressed. So I decided to start the same way I was doing. This was just a selection from the hundreds of events I have experienced as a high-risk professional. 3 different roles in 3 different professions, but always with the same person behind the uniform. In 2021, I left the dynamic world of the high-risk professions. Suddenly, I could no longer hide behind my uniforms and protocols. I became more restless, and nightmares increased. That was a signal for me to get started with myself, and that was hard. To helping myself after 20 years of helping other people. More and more, I started to realize that I had switched off my feelings and emotions, not only functionally, but almost completely. It all started in my childhood, where I grew up in a generation where people hardly talked about feelings and emotions. So I learned to do it by myself, by pushing everything away, and especially not to talk about it. I continued to do this in my work as a soldier and as an ambulance driver, because it served me very well in these professions. But without realizing that I was getting further and further away from my own personality, and that I had lost my real identity. Events piled up, and my armor only grew thicker over the years. In line with those events, my excessive sports and study behavior increased. Later, I learned from experts that this had been my avoidance behavior all those years. I also learned from experts that I had taught myself some safety behavior. I neutralized my sense of insecurity through my hyper-alertness. And that consisted of a lot of looking back on the streets, avoiding light sources in the dark, driving different routes, ducking at home for headlight shining in, and storing defensive weapons next to my bed and in my car. Looking back now, I find it bizarre and crazy that I acted like Rambo in my own safe environment. In this way, I could continue to function all these years without being noticed. And that's also a major disadvantage of mental health problems, which I also call the invisible wounds. You can't hide a visible wound, such as a broken leg. Then you have to take immediate action and report it to those around you. But an invisible wound, such as PTSD, depression, and burnout, can be hidden as long as you can continue to function. In 2013, my first healthy and beautiful daughter was born. My girlfriend cried with happiness, and I felt nothing. I dealt with birth functionally, as I used to. This happened again in 2019 with the birth of my second daughter, who was even endangered to life. I only now realize, with pain in my heart, that I was only physically present at the birth of my daughters. My girlfriend was very aware of this, and she had told me this many times before. But I have always denied that, because in my experience, I was myself. Suddenly, I could no longer recognize those beautiful feelings with that very thick armor around me. With today's knowledge, I feel sorry for the person I was in that time. So a major consequence of switching off functionally my feeling was that the good feeling was also switched off. Okay, may I ask you a question? As you all know, in the Netherlands, we have the well-known greeting questions. How are you doing? Or is everything okay? Which of you usually answers this greeting question with good or yes? Please raise your hand if you answer with yes. That's a lot, thank you. Let's ask you all a second question. Which of you answers this question with good or yes, even when you are sometimes not doing well at all? Please be honest and show your hands if you answer yes. That's what I have always done, even after the intense events I shared with you in the beginning and all the others. And now I wonder why. Was it my ego? Was it the environment? Was I ashamed? Did I feel it was part of my job? Was it because no one did? And no one ever noticed, so I always came away with it. For the past 2 years, I started the journey to rediscover myself. A journey from my head to my heart that is still ongoing. On the journey, trainers, coaches, and psychologists across my path will hold up a mirror to me. I started talking about it to others. And I soon discovered that I was not alone. That already gave me some inner peace. I suspect that there are many similar situations within the high-risk professions at the moment. With my story, I hope to create more awareness around invisible wounds and inspire others to look in the mirror as well. Showing vulnerability is the greatest strength in dealing with invisible wounds. And the answer to all the inner turmoil is within yourself. It's not normal what you see as a high-risk professional, and it should never be. Dear people, my overloaded backpack has been relieved just in time. May I ask you to pay attention to each other and to keep each other's backpacks portable. You can make the difference. Thank you.